right? We have a fence structure that we worked on, the governor worked on with me, and I didn't love it, to be honest with you. I wanted a nice precast concrete, 40, 50 feet high, like a beautiful, could have been a T-shape, Y-shape. I love construction. I wanted that sucker to go up maybe 50, 60 feet. It would have looked beautiful, a nice Y shape. And they said, the problem is, sir, they climbed that like a rabbit. I said, what do you mean? No way. And they brought some of these guys out. They climbed it like... And the other thing is you hit it with acid and the thing will disintegrate. They have things for concrete. So they needed very hardened steel, very special steel. And then they needed 7,000-pound concrete inside that steel, inside that steel. And then they have a rebar that's the toughest steel made. Very hard to cut. So this is why very little is cut. I mean, it's right. And then they put a anti-climb panel on top. I hated it. I said, it's so unattractive. And I said, why would that work? I don't believe it works. And I went to watch the Border Patrol, gave a display. We had actually 2 sets of climbers. The guys that climb up walls with drugs on their back, I mean, they got like 60, 70 pounds of drug, and they go as fast as you can walk. They go bip, bip, bip. Or we have Mount Everest type climbers. And honestly, the drug guys were much better. I couldn't believe it. The drug guys blew them away, right? But it's true, the anti-climb panel, they couldn't get around it. They just couldn't. You didn't have it. So sometimes you sacrifice beauty for efficiency. And we did. So we built this wall, and we built over 500 miles of wall. That's why we had such good numbers. The famous chart that came down, very thankfully, the chart that came down on my right, Governor. Had I not looked over there, I'm not speaking right now. You might be speaking here. You want to know the truth? You, JD, we've got a lot of great people in this party, but I got very lucky, but we had the best numbers we've ever had. But I bought, what happens is when you fill it up, it's like water. You fill it up. Now we have 571 miles of wall. And they would always say, when we renovated a wall, so there'd be like a piece of plywood sitting there for 60 years, or a 2x4 sitting for 60 years on the ground and rotting. Because, and they'll say, you didn't build a new wall. Here we're building 50 feet up in the air, 30 feet sections, 50-foot sections, all steel, all concrete, all everything. And all, by the way, they don't even want me to say this, but what the hell, doesn't take that long time. They're all wired for all of the equipment. We put wires in everything so they can easily wire for all the different types of equipment. And if there's a doubt, we have a wire. Whenever we just look, you just find the wires all over the place up top, so we can just hook it up. We don't have to have wires on the outside, which wouldn't do too well, right? So anyway, we built an extra 200 miles of wall, and the governor wanted to buy it. He tried to buy it, and they wouldn't sell it to him. He wanted to put it up himself. Could have been done in 3 to 4 weeks, 200 more miles, because when you do it now, they just keep going further out, further out, further out, getting around. So we did an extra 200 miles, and it was all bought. And they announced that they're not going to put it up. And that's when I realized they wanted open borders, and that's when I realized that people are going to come pouring through the wall like nobody's ever seen before, but you've seen it. A lot of you are here because of that. I made it my #1 issue. They all said inflation was the #1 issue. I said I disagree. I think people coming into our country from prisons and from mental institutions is a bigger issue for the people that I know. And I made it my #1. I talked about inflation too, but how many times can you say that an apple has doubled in cost? I'd say it, and I'd hit it hard, but then I go back to the fact that we don't want criminals coming into our country. We don't want the jails of every country in the world virtually being deposited into the United States. And that man had to suffer with it. And he did an unbelievable job. I'll tell you, he was a very popular governor, but now he's like an unbeatable governor because of your border policies. He was fantastic. And he really was. So. Governor Abbott he's a great man, great leader. And but it did make him did you do it? You didn't do that for politics. You did it because you wanted to do the right thing. But I'll tell you, it sure as hell worked for politics too. It's self-preservation, that's right. But no, because the people are demanding it. The people of Texas are demanding it. The people are demanding it all over. So anyway, we built it, and they wouldn't let us use it. They wouldn't let the governor use it. And other governors, they wouldn't let him use it. But he was the leader of the pack and did a great job. And then we heard about a month ago that not only wouldn't they let us use it, they were selling it, they were going to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar. Now, 5 cents on the dollar then, but today it would cost more than twice as much to build because we bought it like 6 years ago. And it was just sitting on the ground, and that does not do well for the whole thing. But it was just sitting on the ground, and I heard about it, and I called the governor, and I called a lot of people, your attorney general. And here's the story. They were going to buy it, and these are great business people. They were going to buy it for 5 cents on the dollar or less, and they were calling us up, we'll sell it to you for 200 cents on the dollar. In other words, it will cost you twice as much, so it's 200 cents on the dollar. I said, can somebody explain that to a judge? I mean, how corrupt is that? You'd think they'd say, maybe we'll sell it to you for 20 cents, 30 cents, but not 200 cents. So they were going to buy something for 5 cents, and they were going to sell it to us for a fortune. They were going to make it would be, they'd have it down at, in Fortune magazine, they'd put it of the deal of the year, okay? You buy something like that. But it was so corrupt and so horrible. And when we told that to the administration, they didn't care. They just kept going forward. They couldn't care less. And they kept going forward. They knew that they were trying to sell it back to us. They would have sold it back to us. You would have ended up buying it. You would have paid probably 50, 60 cents, who knows. But they were going to use it for scrap metal, but then they made a much better deal. They could just buy it and sell it to us for 15, 20 times what they paid. 20 times, think of it, like 20 times what they paid. And we wouldn't let it happen. And the governor with his attorney general, Ken Paxton, they made a fantastic, they're a good lawyer. He's pushed around pretty good by people, right? I said, you got a great attorney general. They should leave him alone. He was with me. But Ken and the governor went to court, and a judge actually became incensed and actually called for an investigation. How could a thing like this happen? So he stopped it. So we're waiting to put that wall up. And now that you have a new president, that wall will go up so fast. The governor will complain, sir. This is Greg Abbott, sir. Please, the wall is going up too fast. Please don't do that. You know the story about winning. No, we're going to win too much. We're winning too much. Please, let's stop. People always love that one. We'll do this with the wall. Governor Abbott calls, sir, the wall is going up too fast. We can't take it. We just can't take it. No, I think you'll be very happy if the wall goes up too fast, right? But we'll get that dude and we'll work with you on that. But it was a great decision by a great Texas judge, right? And it was beautiful, beautiful to watch. He stopped them right in their track. I mean, they were literally loading this stuff onto trucks. It was terrible. Honestly, it was terrible. And he wouldn't take it. So I'm so glad I mentioned that they have a really good governor in Texas. And I swear, I didn't know he was here. I swear to you, it sounds like a setup. I didn't know you would end. Did I get lucky? I said the right thing. Because there have been moments when I wasn't so happy with him, you know? But not too many, I can tell you that. So anyway, it's good to see you too, Governor. Great. But I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible. I recognize so many of you. It's so crazy. But this has been a long journey. This was a journey that started in 2015, probably started 20 years before that. People used to say, you're going to run for president? You're going to run? And I always said, no, I don't want. And then one day I said, let's give it a shot. And what I talked about then was the border, too. I think it probably was the number one issue for me. Back in 2015, 2016, I talked about the border. And now I talked about the border, but this border is much worse. We fixed the border. It was totally fixed. There was nothing to talk about. 2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged, but that's okay. It was a rigged election. You know the only thing good about it? It showed how bad they are, showed how incompetent, and frankly, historically, this is a much bigger event. If that would have gone like it should have. The bad thing about it is some bad things happened, like a lot of people in our country that wouldn't be in our country right now. So, you know, that's the bad part. But I will say that it started in 2015, and right from the beginning, we went to the top. Day one, they announced Trump, and Trump went to number one and stayed there for the whole primary. And then we took on Hillary, she didn't look too happy today. We took on Hillary, a very nice person, but we took on Hillary and we defeated Hillary, and then we did much better the second time in 2020. You know, we got millions more votes. We got millions, like 10, 12 million more votes than we did the first time. No president has ever gotten that many more votes. I got like 9 million more than anybody else had ever gotten. And they said we lost. And because of that, I said to Melania, what do you think? And she said, you want to do this again? And had we lost, and had I thought we lost, I wouldn't do it again, because that's like the ultimate poll, right? But I knew how well we did, and this time we made it too big to rig. It was so big. They tried. They tried like hell. But they tried to do it, and around 9:02 they gave up. Last time they did bad things. At this time they just said, you know, I don't know if you saw, Mr. Speaker, in Washington, they had placards. They were all set to march. They thought it'd be closer. A gentleman asked me, a very respected gentleman asked me yesterday, how come the polls were so wrong? They showed you winning, but not in a landslide. I said, because people that are true Trumpers are so angry at the whole polling system and at the writers, the fake news, that they don't want to talk to anybody. So when you call somebody from Trump, who are you voting for? They say, it's none of your business. I'm not telling you. And that was probably 40% of the people they called. So they would discard that one, and they didn't show that. And then when the election happened, you know, the vote came, and it was much different, much higher than, we're going to win, but they really thought, they couldn't believe, the one man said, I mean, it was so much higher. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by millions of votes, which is hard for a Republican. I'll tell you who came through. The unions came through. The auto workers were great. The Teamsters were great. The firemen were great. I think almost every union was great. The only one that weren't great, although Sean was great, and the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, was fantastic. But generally speaking, the head of the union was against Trump, but the union would be with us for like 80, 85%. Look what we did with the auto workers in Michigan. Look what we did with the Teamsters. The Teamsters were unbelievable. They were a solid Democrat vote, and they voted for Trump. So we had a great experience. This has been, now we have to go to work and get it done, because we have to do something that's going to be great. We're going to turn our country around, and we're going to turn it around fast. And I think this was a better speech than the one I made upstairs, okay? I think this was better, JD. I think this was much better, and I got to see my friend. So, Governor, take care of yourself. You call me, we'll start working. You know what that means with him? He's going to be calling me tomorrow morning at about 6. And I said, how about next week? You call me and we're going to get it started real fast. We'll really help you a lot. You've done a fantastic job protecting something which is, it's not supposed to be for the states. And amazing job you've done. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody. And I have a First Lady who's been incredible. She's been incredible. I shouldn't say this. I'm going to get hell when I say this, but her feet are absolutely aching. You know, those heels. And we thought we were leaving. We were going home. Sir, would you be able to go down and say hello to some of your other fans that are here? I said, oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Did you get to see pretty clearly the picture, I hope? Good. That's good. But because you wouldn't want to make the same speech again, right? But she said, darling, I love you so much, but my feet are killing me. I said, honey, let me just see how far it is. I asked the person. Oh, not that long, maybe 400 or 500 yards. That's 5 football fields. I said, can you make it? She said, we're going to make it no matter what. We're going to make it because we have to go, right? Right? And then we went out to the helicopter, though, just prior to this, and said goodbye. And it's a custom, and the wind is blowing like crazy. And with the hat that she's wearing, she almost blew away. We almost lost our. She was being elevated off the ground. She almost blew away. No, so we all appreciate it because you She's been a great First Lady, a beautiful and a great First Lady. And they love our First Lady. You know, JD, whenever I make a speech, I see hundreds of signs, we love our First Lady, we love, and they do, and they should, she's great. So I just want to thank you very much. I just want to thank everybody. And I felt that, I said to JD, should we give him the A treatment, the B treatment, the C, the D, or the F? You know what the F is? Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye. I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Governor. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
And President Trump speaking at Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center, still in the Capitol complex. About 1,300 invited guests there. 800 were up in the rotunda for the inaugural address. And he's got a third stop, which is Capital One Arena, the sports arena here in Washington, D.C., less than a mile from the Capitol. About 20,000 people were there for the inaugural address, and the president will be heading there this afternoon for a truncated parade and executive order signing ceremony. So that's coming up this afternoon before he returns to the White House and to the inaugural balls. If you get tired of hearing the talking and just want to watch the pictures, go to C-SPAN 2. It's just all the pictures of Washington right now. What's going on, we switch them from time to time. You'll see the motorcade, etc., and no commentary whatsoever. That's all on C-SPAN 2. Want to remind you, this afternoon we will be taking your phone calls. The phone numbers are up on the screen. 202 is the area code, 748-8000 for Democrats, 8001 for Republicans, 8002 for all others, and we do have our text line. 202-748-8003. If you want to send a text, give us your reaction to the now 2-hour-old second Trump administration. And if you do send a text, please include your first name and your city, if you would. Let's catch up with John McCardle and the news.
Peter, that second address, almost a second inaugural address, as it were, that President Trump gave in Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center, it was 33 minutes long. It'll probably make as much news as the inaugural address, which was 29 minutes. In that address in Emancipation Hall, he talked about a lot of different topics. I want to run through a couple of them, including pardons, focusing a lot on the actions of now former President Joe Biden just before leaving office, 11th and a half hour pardons. It started this morning with a slew of pardons. Here's the headline from the Hill newspaper. Anthony Fauci, Mark Milley, the former Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, the January 6th committee, including former Congresswoman Liz Cheney and police officers who testified before the January 6th committee. Those pardons came earlier this morning. And then right before Donald Trump took the oath of office, it was another set of pardons that came out from the Biden administration. It was for James Biden, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden Owens, John T. Owens, and Francis W. Biden, the family members, the brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law of President Biden. Those came out literally minutes before Donald Trump took the oath of office and became president of the United States. A statement from the White House with the issuance of those last pardons. Joe Biden saying in that statement, "My family has been subject to unrelenting attacks and threats motivated solely by a desire to hurt me. It's the worst kind of partisan politics. I believe in the rule of law, and I'm optimistic that the strength of our legal institutions will ultimately prevail, but baseless and politically motivated investigations wreak havoc on lives, safety, and the financial security of targeted individuals and their families." That statement coming along with the issuance of those last-second pardons by the Biden administration and reaction to those pardons from members of Congress, including James Comer, who led one of the key Republican investigations into the Biden family. His statement coming just after 12:01, after Donald Trump officially then became president, saying former President Biden's preemptive pardons of the Biden crime family served as a confession of their corruption as they sold out the American people to enrich themselves. One of the other topics that Donald Trump talked about in that address in Emancipation Hall, that 33-minute address, was the breakdown of the House of Representatives, speaking to Speaker Mike Johnson about how close the margin is in the House. Right now, the numbers are 433 members of the House. Chad Pergram with the tweet, it's 218 Republicans, 215 Democrats. It's razor thin. The two vacancies are former Congressman Matt Gaetz, who didn't take office, and former Congressman Michael Waltz, who resigned just this morning. Michael Waltz has been nominated by Donald Trump to be Trump's national security advisor, expects to be confirmed to that post. And so that resignation coming this morning. Michael Waltz with a tweet of his own today. He was at St. John's Church this morning there with Elon Musk, with the president and the president-elect for that ceremony at the start of the day. One other tweet for you this morning. President Donald Trump's Twitter account, just before he started that address in Emancipation Hall, with about a 30-second video. It's a video that also appears on the White House website. It is his initial video, his return to the presidency as POTUS on Twitter. At POTUS is the Twitter handle. This is that video.
And we are back live. That's a live picture of the Capitol taken from the top of the Washington Monument. You can see it was all set up for an outdoor festival or an outdoor inaugural, but of course that didn't occur. Inside the Capitol is the Congressional Luncheon. We're about an hour behind schedule right now, with Donald Trump doing the second remarks at the Capitol and at Emancipation Hall. But you can see John Cornyn there on the screen. Some of the other folks that are there. Pam Bondi, the AG designate. Bernie Sanders is down there on the far right. So you will see, and that's Pam Bondi in the checkered pink upper left. She is the Attorney General nominee and has held a hearing. Her hearing on her nomination has been held already, and we should see that vote coming this week or next week in the full Senate. Barron Trump was standing right behind her at 6'9". Jeffrey Engel is with the Southern Methodist University Center for Presidential History. Mr. Engel, the Trump administration, take two, is 2 hours old. What do you think so far?
You know, I'm reminded that the National Archives is charged with recording every word that the president says for future use by historians. And some words seem a little bit more chosen with forethought than others. I think it's really impressive that the president has decided to, in his second address now, the one that we just heard, decided to once more run through a litany of essentially campaign promises and campaign grievances. And the only news I think which we got from that was discussion of the January 6th defendants, though of course we don't have real, actual, hard news yet that I've seen about what the president has decided to do. All in all, it's a reminder that this president does things differently. Previous chief executives, when they come into office, especially on their first day, talk about what the team did, talk about the celebration, talk about the way forward. Less of a litany of complaints that we just saw.
And the luncheon, the congressional luncheon, there is a chance that he could make remarks there as well. And he will be making remarks probably at the Capital One Center this afternoon when the truncated parade is held indoors as well. Jeffrey Engel, he's got a signing ceremony as well this afternoon at the Capitol. What happens there?
They're going to essentially make it formal, make it official, all the different executive orders that he has initiated. These are oftentimes done in a ceremonial fashion. This is one of those moments where you might see the president hand out dozens of pens with, perhaps even half a letter for each pen to the different people who might be interested in that particular piece of executive authority. Again, I have to stress, this is not legislation. This is not something that the Congress has voted upon. This is something that the president has taken upon himself, as all presidents do in recent administrations, to essentially rewrite the rule books, if you will, as quickly as possible upon taking office.
Do you know why the presidential oath of office is different than the vice presidential oath of office?
The presidential oath of office is actually in the Constitution. The vice presidential is not. And I think that tells us a lot, that essentially the president was written by committee, but written to be short. We have to remember, whenever we're talking about the Constitution's initial description of the presidency, that it's in Article 2 of the Constitution. Article 1 was the legislature, and that's not by accident. The legislature is where the people who wrote the Constitution thought most power would reside. The chief executive was designed with exactly that word in mind, that he was supposed to execute the laws of the United States. So that's why that we have such a short period for the president. In the Constitution, it's as an oath, it simply says you will faithfully execute the office. Now, the vice presidential oath was written subsequently and by people who had a little bit more ink and paper. And so it became more of a long-winded ritual, whereas the presidential oath is beautiful, I think, in its simplicity. It really gets to the essence that your job as president is to protect and defend the Constitution, period.
Pete Hegseth was just on the screen, DOD Secretary nominee, and of course Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas, is there on your screen talking with Ivana Trump. And this is at the congressional luncheon. Donald Trump Jr. and Roger Wicker. And Roger Wicker is the Armed Services Committee Chair. He is very influential in defense matters and a supporter of Pete Hegseth to be the defense secretary. So this is all happening in Statuary Hall as we speak. Both Democrats and Republicans do not know whether, I know we heard earlier whether the Bushes and the Clintons were attending this lunch and how traditional that is. Jeffrey Engel, do you know who attends this lunch, and do the ex-presidents usually attend this lunch?
It varies dramatically, and I have to stress, when we start talking about ex-presidents, we're dealing with a remarkably small sample size. We're at a really peak period at this moment, unfortunately, because of Presidents Carter passing and then previously President H.W. Bush right before. We basically were at a high for ex-presidents. Now, of course, we're down to 3. So the president of the same party would oftentimes attend, the former president of the same party would oftentimes attend that inauguration, but not if they're the president who had just left office, because then they have the ceremony for that president to fly off Ironically, for Ronald Reagan and others, flying off to California seems to be a popular thing to do. And so the takeaway I'm trying to get at is that we have a very, very small sample size. And so I'm very hesitant to say what typically happens, because each one of these inaugural events is really created for its own specific moment.
Lower right corner, Scott Turner, the HUD nominee. Obviously, Ivanka Trump in the middle. And that is Carrie Underwood down there. And I believe that's her husband, who plays in the NHL. He's a hockey player, and he plays, somebody will tell me what team he plays for, but I know he's a professional hockey player. Let's hear from our viewers as we go this afternoon. What we're waiting on is the luncheon. We don't know if we're going to have a speaking portion for that. We got the signing ceremony coming up. We have the review of the troops, all being done at the Capitol complex before Donald Trump goes to the Capital One Arena Center for the truncated parade, and then finally to the White House. Let's hear from Brad. Brad is in International Falls, Minnesota. Brad, what do you think so far?
Well, I think it was, it's been great so far. And I'm kind of impressed with C-SPAN today in a way, that how you started talking about the things that happened this morning with Biden pardoning these people of no crime that they've ever been, charged with. And so that made me really happy that you started talking about that, because the regular media isn't going to talk about it. But I've always been skeptical with C-SPAN too, and I just want to point something out that you had said, that when he was giving his second address to the people down below, and you were talking about the lady from Nebraska, and about how her husband wouldn't shake the hand of then Vice President Harris. And I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be a reason why you're doing that. I mean, are you trying to shame the guy, or for whatever reason? But that's like old news. I mean, what you should be talking about is the news of today. And the news of today is that, well, Nancy Pelosi didn't show up. Michelle Obama didn't show up. There's plenty of other things.
Thank you, Brad, for that. And in news also, Karen Pence, Mike Pence's wife, did not show up as well. Patricia is calling in from Minneapolis. Patricia, what do you think so far?
Yeah. Well, I think that C-SPAN is continuing their biased coverage. I agree with the man from International Falls. And plus the guests you have, he's been nothing but fairly critical about the speech. I love the speech. President Trump is informing people, a job that C-SPAN should have done for the last 4 years, of all the corruption and negative and horrible things that the Bidens have done. I pray and I hope that C-SPAN will be halfway fair.
Hey, Patricia, thank you. The president is about to sign some of the official documents in the president's room at the Capitol.
We went to the helicopter. It was freezing. The sun is a little deceptive.
Yes, it is.
So what would you like us to do?
Sign your orders.
Official documents.
Okay, I assume they're going to be happy with these documents?
Yeah, they're we might not be here.
It's the next step.
It's a tradition.
Sir, the first is 22 cabinet and cabinet level appointments for your signature.
Okay.
The next one will be, excuse me, next one will be 47 sub-cabinet level appointments, sir.
But you don't have to sign 47 times.
sir. Now 31 acting designations and appointments to effectively take control of the government.
Let's do that. Yeah, that's important.
Sounds important, doesn't it?
Thank you.
And we have 15 commission chairman and acting chairman appointments.
Send him.
Commission chairman and acting chairman.
He was number one at Harvard also. You know that? He was number.
Good counsel.
They have something in common.
Thank you, sir. Lastly, we have a proclamation ordering that on all future inauguration days, including this inauguration day, that flags shall be flown at full mast.
Very important.
That was a beautiful place to have an inauguration tonight. The sound was so good. The temperature was 72 degrees, but the sound was so good. So maybe something to think about.
Thank you.
Okay?
Good acoustics. Yes.
All right. Now we,
That's it.
we go to lunch.
Great. Very
Nice
good.
to meet you. Thank you very much. There we go. Take that. All right. See you.
Thank you, sir.
President, did you have a good meeting with former President Biden?
Very nice. Very nice. It's a beautiful custom.
Mr. President,
It goes back as long as hell comes. Before that, it was a stagecoach. But it was, I thought it was beautiful. Thank you. Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Chuck.
Mr. President, do you have any reaction to the pardons President Biden did at the last minute?
Well, I'm not going to discuss it now. I think it was unfortunate that he did that. We won't discuss it now. There's plenty of time to discuss it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Should we go to lunch?
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay.
Head to lunch.
Ready for lunch? Okay. Thank you.
Struggling.
All right. Okay.
That was 3 times the number of appointments you did in 2017, sir, on day one. Plenty more time. Just getting started.
A lot of good work to do. Close your eyes. So where are we going to stop? That's good counsel.
Try to look through your documents.
You just saw Democratic leaders Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, along with Senate Majority Leader John Thune, talking with the president as he signed some official congressional documents. And you also heard him say that he really enjoyed having the inaugural in the rotunda of the Capitol. Jeffrey Engel, do you think that's a possibility that they will move the inaugural into the Capitol?
You know, the inauguration's only been at the on the National Mall since 1985. Since 1981, when Ronald Reagan from California wanted to essentially put a Western stamp, if you will, on the entire agenda for his administration, looking to the West and also metaphorically, I think, looking to the future. And before that, of course, the presidents were most typically inaugurated on the East steps, where we saw President Biden leave in the Marine One helicopter. And that's, of course, the site where, for example, President Lincoln gave his remarkable first, but more importantly, second inaugural address. That's the site where Franklin Roosevelt said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself," in 1933. So that's also the site where John Kennedy said that we are passing the torch to a new generation. So there's no reason to think that they couldn't decide to keep using the National Mall. Frankly, I think given the length of the ceremony and the fact that President Trump's agenda is already timeline for today is already several hours behind, I think it was perhaps a good thing to get people out of the cold. I myself have been in the cold on the Mall in January watching our president be sworn in, and it's darn cold out there.
Coming up, the Congressional Luncheon, and we've been showing you pictures from Statuary Hall inside the Capitol of some of the members who are gathering for that. After that, a review of the troops by President Trump. Then he will depart the Capitol, motorcade to Capital One Arena, which is the name of our sporting arena here in Washington, D.C., less than a mile. After that, he'll speak to supporters there. About 20,000 people have been there all day listening and watching the inauguration. And he will do a signing ceremony there as well, some remarks, and then off to the White House. And then tonight, it's the inaugural balls. He is scheduled to attend 2 or 3 of those. And of course, C-SPAN will be live with all of that. Reminder that C-SPAN 2 is just pictures of Washington throughout the day from all the different cameras that are available to us without commentary. Jeffrey Engel, it is a little disconcerting to see outside Washington empty on inaugural day like it is.
It's very unusual. I mean, normally this day would be absolutely packed, but I think as we start thinking about the incoming second now Trump administration, it's also, especially as a historian, I think time to start really thinking about the Biden administration. And one thing that I think we should recall from Biden's campaign in 2020 was his pledge, essentially, that he was going to restore normalcy. Now, remember, that was in the middle of a pandemic. There was lots of crises going on in the country, political division. But his pledge was really to return the country to a normal, almost boring state of affairs, if you will, where things happened as expected. In some ways, I think what we're seeing today is the culmination and accomplishment of the Biden administration, which is that what's going on today with the new administration coming in is something that we used to say before January 6th of last time was remarkable, that we have this normal, peaceful transfer of power. Well, it seems pretty normal today. So in a sense, I think that President Biden, while of course, no doubt disappointed in the outcome of the recent election, and of course, had some difficulties trying to understand his own role in that election, and there's no doubt, I think, that he would look at the events of today being so routine and say that this is part of the accomplishment of my administration.
Jeffrey Engel, in a contemporarily put way, how would you rate the Biden administration at this point? I know it's terribly early.
Well, it's terribly early. I think that actually legislatively, they turned out to be one of the more accomplished administrations. I think in some ways they're an administration that would have to rank with the New Deal and with Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, and in some ways with President Reagan's own first-term agenda as transformative for the nation. However, the real point, I think, of the Biden administration, President Biden's own personal participation in it, was essentially to replace President Trump and then to keep President Trump out of office. So from a legislative, from a bureaucratic, from a policy perspective, I would have to say that they're going to get very, very good marks by historians because they simply accomplished a lot. On the big theme of the administration, which was, as President Biden said, to preserve democracy, not saying that President Trump is or is not preserving democracy, but President Biden made the point that his administration was really in many ways to keep Trump from coming back into power. So there's no way I think that historians will look at his agenda, President Biden, and say that it was in any way fulfilled because the singular purpose of his running failed to materialize.
At the luncheon, Justice Samuel Alito is sitting with Apple CEO Tim Cook, along with Donald Trump Jr. You can see Senator Scott. The prayer is happening right now at the Congressional Luncheon. We've got a few more minutes with our guest, Jeffrey Engel of Southern Methodist University. We also want to take some calls and hear your voices. Lee in California, what do you want to say?
Well, today's a great day. I just want to do an air clap for our country. We have President Trump back in the presidency. I want to tell everybody in America to unite. I'm here in California. I think we're going to see Biden out here pretty soon. I just want to let everybody know in the media, it's not really good to go after Trump too much because that's kind of why he's back in the office. So, all the clemency that Biden did and all the shenanigans at the end, I think we really need to kind of look at this last administration and let's kind of be a cheerleader for our country and for our president, and let's kind of have some goodwill to come together. I am an independent, but I did vote for Donald Trump because I want to see our country go back to security and securing our borders. So I just hope C-SPAN will stay on the right path, and you guys will report on him legitimately, and you'll report on his legacy moving forward.
That is Lee in California. Thank you for calling in. Robert Kennedy Jr., the HHS Secretary nominee, along with his wife, Cheryl Hines, is sitting with Senators Lisa Murkowski and Chris Coons. Next call is Clayton of Wichita, Kansas, Republican line. Hi, Clayton.
Hi, thank you for taking my call, and happy Martin Luther King Day. Great Inauguration Day, even though it was very cold out there. It's still cold here in the middle of the country, too. What I wanted to say is now that Trump is in office, all of his administration has said a lot of things, and I want to see if they're going to fulfill it or not. For instance, like what Kash Patel has said about the FBI headquarters, and what they've came out and said, Donald Trump is signing a lot of executive orders, but let's see where it goes. And insofar as with Biden signing all these pardons, now I want to know, what did they do that they deserve pardons? And keep in mind, they can't plead the fifth now that they've received pardons in the criminal case against somebody who doesn't happen to have a pardon.
And that just a second ago, you saw Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth sitting with Justice Thomas and his wife, Ginny Thomas. It looks like they're standing for the president's entrance into Statuary Hall.
By Mrs. Weinshaw Schumer. House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, accompanied by Mrs. Scalise. And House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries. Please remain standing for the honors and the invocation. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President of the United States, ranking member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer and Mr. Fischer. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance, accompanied by Mrs. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President of the United States, the Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar and Mr. Bessler. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump and Mrs. Trump.
people are very hungry, so I'm going to get this started. Mr. President and Madam First Lady, Mr. Vice President and Madam Second Lady, my colleague Senator Fisher, distinguished guests including the Speaker, Leader Jeffries, and Senate Leaders Thune and Schumer, on behalf of the United States Congress, welcome to the 60th inaugural lunch. Big surprise, we are featuring Nebraska beef and Minnesota apples for dessert. We are here in Statuary Hall, where these luncheons have taken place since President Reagan's first inauguration in 1981, and where the House of Representatives once met over 150 years ago. That would be before you were born, Mr. Speaker. In 1864, after the new House wing of the Capitol was built, and in the midst of the Civil War, Congress dedicated this chamber to host statues chosen by every state. Walking into the hall, we all passed under the arch, holding the marble car of history clock. The statue shows Cleo, the Greek muse of history, holding a book to record events as they happen. And as you can see, she's heard a lot of stuff. And as she rides her chariot forward into the future, she looks behind her to remember the past. She remains here as she has for hundreds of years, a reminder that history will remember the events of the present, and it is on us to write that history right now. Speaking of art, the painting right here before you, I chose this painting for this lunch this summer, and it's titled American Horizon. It's by Jane Wilson, who grew up on her family farm in Seymour, Iowa. Coming from the middle of our country, Senator Fisher and I both liked the painting because the artist is from America's heartland, but the horizon could easily be Florida, Mr. President. I will also note that this is the first time in history we are featuring the work of a woman artist at this lunch, and we thank the Art Institute of Chicago for their assistance. Looking at the vast open landscape of this painting, we're drawn to the bottom of the frame where the land or the water, depending on where you're from, meets the sky, and the horizon endures. The enduring horizon is especially meaningful for us today as we mark our enduring democracy as we approach its 250th anniversary. It's a reminder that what's over the horizon is our next chapter, and it is my prayer that the people in this room can write that chapter together. I'd now like to ask U.S. Senate Chaplain Dr. Barry Black, and we thank God he is back with us and in good health, to deliver the invocation, after which lunch will be served. Thank you.
Let us pray. King of kings and Lord of lords, whose kingdom is above all earthly kingdoms, and who judges all lesser sovereignties, look with favor upon President Donald John Trump and Vice President James David Vance. Empower them with the wisdom and courage needed for our times. Protect them from the vicissitudes and challenges that obstruct the making of a world of justice, peace, and righteousness. Lord, give them a deep desire to do their best for our country and world, and a determination to act in ways pleasing to you. Preserve their families in health and strength by your grace and power. Bless now this luncheon as each of us finds your grace sufficient for every need. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
And after the lunch, President Trump will review the troops at the Capitol before heading off to Capital One Arena for the truncated presidential parade. Ursula Perano is a congressional reporter with Politico, and she is joining us. Ms. Perano, 2.5 hours into the Trump administration, what's your take?
Yeah, I think things are moving particularly quickly. We're seeing a ton of announcements already so far on legislative actions. Republicans in Congress very quickly coming out saying they're ready to get to work, digging into their own priorities that they're hoping to see Trump pass quickly. So I think we're seeing an administration and a trifecta of Republicans between the House, Senate, and White House that are really digging in to try and get things done quicker than we might have seen in previous administrations.
Well, let's talk about that trifecta of Trump, Johnson, and Thune. Senate Majority, Speaker of the House, President.
Yeah, I think there are some interesting dynamics between these congressional leaders and President Trump. You know, they have spent a lot of time in recent weeks and months trying to talk and make sure they're on the same page about the legislative agenda. But even as we start going into these first few weeks, there are clear differences we're still seeing between Trump, the House, and the Senate on just certain things about legislative approach, even like one bill on reconciliation or two. I think both of these leaders are going to really have to lean into their personal relationships with Donald Trump, which do differ. Speaker Mike Johnson, obviously, the last time Trump was in office, was not somebody who was on his radar. And so they have worked to develop a relationship within, these past few years as Trump clearly rose again to the presidency. And then John Thune had some bumpy years with Trump. He had some years where he was perhaps seen as one of the more critical Republicans of Trump, particularly after January 6th. But he's been doing a lot to shore up his relationship with the president as well. And so we're going to be seeing those relationships actually be put to the test now that there is no more talk. It's not just talking about, here are the things we want to do, here are the nominees we want to get through. People actually have to be able to prove, being Thune and Johnson, have to be able to prove that they can corral their Republican members around President Trump's priorities.
President Trump talked about a couple of specifics in his speech, including the border and DEI, some of these things. How do you see this moving legislatively?
I think we're going to be seeing a lot of focus on trying to get as much done through reconciliation as possible. Granted, that is limiting. You know, it has to have that budget tie that can get through the Senate parliamentarian. And so some things like border might have some wiggle room there. Other things might be more difficult for Republicans to package in there. I think we are going to see Trump, of course, move on a lot of executive orders where we could see some of his priorities get through perhaps more seamlessly, because inevitably the filibuster does still exist in the Senate. There's no sign that Senate Republicans are eager particularly to overturn it. And there are still enough Democrats to block most legislation aside from reconciliation from moving forward. So I think we are going to see Senate Republicans in particular and House Republicans digging in their heels on using that sort of legislative process to get through as much as they possibly can before Democrats are able to sort of put up their figurative wall that they're hoping to hold on to.
And we should note that the Senate is due to come into session this afternoon, correct?
Yes, they are. They will be back taking a vote this evening. And there's a lot of eyes on whether Senator Rubio will be confirmed as Secretary of State this evening. There are some traditions around letting one nominee, maybe two nominees, get confirmed on day one. But it would require Senate Democrats allowing for a time agreement for that nomination to be sped up. We've heard from a lot of Senate Democrats who said they're open to that, but they're deferring to leadership so far. So we're going to have to see over the next few hours if Senate Democratic leadership would agree to that sort of procedural motion to let Rubio through quickly, who he does have a lot of Democratic support across the aisle.
Ursula Perano, a lot of festivities today, of course, but do you expect a very busy week in the Senate, particularly when it comes to some of the nominations?
I think we are going to see a busy week. We're going to see a lot of hearings continue and votes on nominees within committees. And then I think we're going to see at least a couple of nominees get through the floor. There, again, hopes to have at least one tonight. I think there are other nominees like Ratcliffe that we could see pretty quickly as we move into the week. You know, and there's this desire by Senate Republican leadership to give the presentation and also to prove that they're ready to get to work. That is something that new GOP leader John Thune has really emphasized by beefing up the Senate schedule, by nixing several rounds of recess over the next few months, by saying that Friday votes are going to be a regular thing. That's rather abnormal in the Senate. They tend to leave town on Thursdays. They tend to take a break one recess week-ish each month to go work in their districts. And so there is this idea that Thune is really going to want to put his foot on the gas and get Republicans moving quickly on policy and on legislation, and particularly reconciliation, which folks are hoping to have done by spring.
CEOs from Apple, TikTok, Google, Meta, all present and accounted for up on at the inaugural speech, and of course Elon Musk as well. Do you expect some action on when it comes to tech policy, and if so, what?
I think we are seeing tech and the White House really cozy up in a way where you can tell that there is some intentional relationships being built there. There were a lot of Republican lawmakers, including some governors, that didn't even make it in the rotunda today due to the limited seating situation. So when you do see who made it in, that isn't necessarily on the traditional list for legislators that might attend an inauguration, it does sort of raise some attention to what is the nature of the connections that are being formed there. Democrats have already pointed out this sort of connection and these criticisms, and so there will be pushback from the left. But I do think it's a sign that Trump, or at least tech, are trying to find some way to work together. And we'll have to see what that looks like in policy.
Yeah, we saw Governor Greg Abbott of Texas in the overflow room down in the Emancipation Hall. President Trump called him out a couple times.
Yeah. And so it's one of those tricky politics that have really been shown by this unique situation of having the rotunda be the space for the inauguration, is that you can't have everybody. And so who got on the invite list to be inside the room versus in that overflow space is definitely something that people are really looking to. And I'll say right now, even with the lunch, there's a lot of questions about the seating arrangements. Who sat next to each other? Where are nominees placed next to certain senators? And how might that be an effort to court support for confirmation on the floor? You know, there's a lot of internal politics that pop up today of trying to see who's where and why.
Ursula Perano, are you up on the Hill today? Are you in the Capitol? And if so, what's it like?
I am up here. I am in a Senate call booth right now, these glorious little rooms that we get. You know, it is a ton of increased security right now. There's very limited movement throughout the building.
Even for
the
you?
Perimeter, yeah, even for reporters right now, a lot of normal stakeout spots are still somewhat limited access, as members and folks with security details, in particular up in the administration, are moving throughout the building. But we're expecting within the next few hours, normal movement will open up and security will go back sort of to the more normal level. But it's definitely, it's tightened up here for sure.
Ursula Perano with Politico, we really appreciate your time. Look forward to talking to you in the near future. The president has one more event after the lunch, and this is a review of the troops. And we, of course, at C-SPAN will be carrying that live. Then he's off to Capital One Arena for the truncated parade, and then to the White House. John is calling in from Washington, D.C., a Democrat. John, what's this week been like with all the lockdowns in this city for you?
Oh, it's been a little inconvenient, but it was disappointing not to actually have the inauguration. But first of all, I just want to thank C-SPAN for covering everything. I think we've heard from the Trump supporters that they feel like anything that's not complete favoritism is considered somehow biased against Trump. But boy, today I'll tell you, like, just listening to his list of grievances and blaming others for all kinds of things, I mean, that just seems like a small vision for our country. And, you know, I wish someone would ask him, you know, whether it's him or Musk or any of these people, why they don't help out the people themselves in North Carolina or California. You know, they are billionaires. If they wanted to put some money there, there's nothing stopping them. And finally, just, you know, D.C. actually wants to be a state, not Canada. He might want to consider helping us out here in the city, you know, while he is president for 4 years.
John, as a Democrat in Washington, D.C., which voted 94% for Kamala Harris, are these 4 years, do you anticipate them being tough for you personally? Or mentally, however you want to look at it?
Well, I guess the way you have to think about it is in terms of the city. I mean, does he care about the people who live here, or is he just trying to make political statements at our expense? And so, you know, when we say we want to be a state here in the city, I mean, he can do basically whatever they want. We are under congressional, you know, control. And so that's always disappointing when they like to exercise that power versus letting the people here run the city just like every other state in the country does.
Is your job impacted by administrations, Republican or Democrat?
No, not directly, but it could be because, the idea that he's going to support initiatives that I care about, which is, helping people in the city get ahead. We'll see if that's what he has an interest in or if it's really just about helping billionaires.
That's John calling in from Washington, D.C. Maya is next. Little Rock, Arkansas, Republican line. Good afternoon, Maya. Maya? Let's move on to Ed. Ed is an independent in Ohio. Ed, good afternoon.
Hello.
What are your thoughts so far on the new Trump administration?
I'm glad for it, but I was just wondering if anybody else noticed that he did not place his hand on the Bible when he made his swore his allegiance to the Constitution. Why? I mean, his wife was standing there with both Bibles in her hand, and he never did place his hand on that. I don't understand.
That's Ed in Ohio. Let's leave it there, Ed, and let's check in again with John McCardle here at C-SPAN. John, what do you have for us?
Peter, it's a day of pomp and circumstance. There's that inaugural luncheon that's going on right now, but a reminder to viewers that it's also a business day on Capitol Hill, and there's a lot of business yet to be done today. You touched a little bit on this on your interview with Ursula Perano, but the Senate comes in at 4:30 p.m. Eastern today, and committees will begin meeting in the late afternoon around that time to prepare some of these confirmation votes. The vote has to take place in the committee before there's a floor vote. So let me run through some of those committee hearings that are happening today. Chad Pergram of Fox News with this wrap up. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee preps Marco Rubio's nomination for Secretary of State. That's at 4:30 p.m. The Senate Intelligence Committee prepares the nomination of John Ratcliffe to be CIA Director. 4:45 p.m. The Homeland Security Committee advancing the nomination of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. The one that we're expecting there to be a final floor vote today on is Marco Rubio, but we'll, of course, find out if any more of those nominees officially get confirmed by the end of Donald Trump's first day in office. Some history on that from Chad Pergram. On Inauguration Day 2021, the Senate confirmed Avril Haines as Director of the National Intelligence for President Biden. And Inauguration Day 2017, the Senate confirmed James Mattis as Defense Secretary and John Kelly as DHS Secretary for President Trump, Trump 45. So we'll see what happens today. We do know that it's a busy week for confirmation hearings and more of those movements happening this week. But we also know that President Trump is not just going to be in D.C. this week. He will go out to the country later this week. This from Jake Traylor of ABC News, noting that President Trump is expected to visit Asheville, North Carolina, which was impacted, of course, by Hurricane Helene in September. In addition, Trump has said he will be visiting California on Friday to survey wildfire damage. So not just a newsy day here in Washington, a newsy week for this country.
Hey, John, a minute ago or a little bit earlier in the program, you pulled up the new White House website. Do you have that available to show to viewers one more time?
I can certainly get it for you, Peter.
And it switched right at noon after the president was sworn in, and it became Trump-centric rather than Biden-centric, correct?
The headline on the front page, it was literally moments after the official swearing in that whitehouse.gov became this version of whitehouse.gov. America is back, with the big picture of Donald Trump there and accompanying video as well on the official White House webpage.
Thank you, John McCardle. Mike, Bessemer City, North Carolina, Republican. Hi, Mike. What are your thoughts about the president's speeches so far?
Oh, I love the speeches, and I appreciably want to say great job for C-SPAN from showing last night to today and hopefully all evening. But yes, his speeches were what he ran on: closing the border, doing away with this DEI garbage. You know, I mean, it's just it's a great day in America, and it's a happy Inauguration Day and happy Martin Luther King Day. But we need to focus on what he ran on, what he talked on. The Democrats are going to say it's divisive, but that's what he ran on. That's what he promised to America. And like he said, you had a historic number of blacks, historic number of young people, historic number of Hispanics that voted for him because they went through 4 years of crazy. And it was so good to see the people coming in and out without men wearing dresses in there.
Hey, Mike, how close are you to Asheville, North Carolina?
We're about, let me see, well, we're about 20 miles from Charlotte. We're probably about an hour and a half from Asheville.
John McCardle just reported that he's going to be down there this week, that President Trump is coming down there. Another change at the White House. Now, eagle-eyed viewers would have noticed earlier on, prior to noon, that the flag at the White House with the POW MIA flag was at half staff. It is now at full staff over the White House. Half staff, of course, in honor of Jimmy Carter. President Biden asked for 30 days for that, but President Trump and Mike Johnson down at the Capitol, the Speaker, ordered that the flags be flown at full staff during the inauguration. Jan, or is that, Jan in Buffalo, New York. Hi, Jan.
Hey, so my name's actually Ian.
You know what? I almost went with Ian, and I didn't, and I should have. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for taking my call. I finally have something in common with Cher, which I'm very happy about. Just wanted to start off by saying you guys were asking about Carrie Underwood's husband earlier. That's actually Mike Fisher.
Nashville Predators.
Yep, ironically for the Ottawa Senators, too.
Yeah, I thought he played for a Canadian team, and I didn't want to step too far into that. So.
Yeah, well, anyway, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say, I used to be a Republican. I was a registered Republican up until 2016. I supported John Kasich, and then after Trump won, I started my descent into becoming a Democrat. Just watching all of this in the past 8 years, how he just constantly lies about everything. I mean, Christ, he got up there in his second address saying how Biden pardoned all these death row criminals. Well, no, he didn't. He just commuted their sentence. And not even all of them. I mean, the guy who did the Boston bombing, he didn't get his sentence commuted. So, I really don't know what there is to be angry about.
So, Ian, can I ask you, because a lot of Democrats have gone the other way and become Republicans because of President Trump, is your evolution, is it a political thing? Is it the issue-based thing, or is it the personal? You just don't like him as a person, or you don't like his policies?
I don't like his politics, and I don't like him as a person anymore. I used to love watching him on The Apprentice, and then he became a politician. And he was just lying about everything. And at first, when he first came down that golden escalator, I'm thinking, well, this is going to be different. And little did I know how much that different actually was.
Jim, what do you do up in Buffalo?
Well, I teach high schoolers theater.
Terrific. Thanks for calling in, Ian. We appreciate it. Next call is Robert in Bloomingdale, Illinois, Independent Line. Please go ahead, Robert.
Yes, I just wanted to say it's a great day for America. Congratulations to President Trump. And as an independent, once a conservative Democrat, he has a lot to do to reverse to get back to we the people, not we the government. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for calling in. One more event for the president after the lunch at the Capitol, and this is a review of the troops. President Trump will be doing that. We'll be watching that. And then he's off to the Capital One Arena, where 20,000 people are there right now waiting for him. They've been there all day. They watched the inaugural. You can see it there. Elon Musk is speaking to those folks right now. And that will be live this afternoon. There will be a truncated parade as well. And again, all live on C-SPAN. And then at some point, President Trump will make it back to the White House. He's running a good hour and a half late right now. So he'll make it back to the White House at some point, sign some executive orders, and then attend 2 or 3 balls. Well, a little after 1 o'clock, the Trumps walked the Bidens out to the east front of the Capitol to Marine One, to the helicopter, and the Bidens were taken to Andrews Air Force Base for a special air mission flight, Special Air Mission 46, flying them to California. Here's the departure ceremony for the Bidens at Andrews Air Force Base.
Thank you.
Wow. Folks, came to thank you. You know, I don't think we could have done anything. I know we couldn't have done anything we did without you. Kamala and Doug and members of the cabinet, all the staff that's here, from all across all the agencies, and friends, supporters. Jill and I are forever grateful to you. I mean that. We're genuinely grateful. As you heard me say before, no president gets to choose the moment they enter history, but they get to choose the team they enter history with. And we chose the best damn team in the world. You are. it's because of you. I mean this sincere from the bottom of my heart. Because of you, we got so much done for all of Americans. I look down there, my Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, exceeded only by his wife who worked for me first. But look, I only hope to look back on these years, hope you look back on them, with the same pride I have of all you've done. I'm proud of is that you did it upholding the core values of honesty, decency, and integrity. I mean, no scandal. I mean, it's incredible what you did. And you represent the best of who we are as Americans. That's not a joke. That's real. Now, while I relied on your ideas and resolve and counsel, we also relied on your families. To all your families, thank you for the sacrifices you made. I mean it. For being part of this journey. Every day, I'm deeply moved by all we all did for this country. I really mean it. History's going to mark down just what you did. But the point I want to make today is to make clear my farewell address, as we all do have we have a lot more to do. We heard the inaugural address today. We got a lot more to do. I know from many years of experience, they're up and down, but we have to stay with it. My dad taught me the measure of a person, you heard me say this before, is how quickly they get back up when they get knocked down. That's what we have to do right now. And we've always done our best as Americans. We never give up. Never. We're leaving office, but we're not leaving the fight. You're smart, you're skilled, you're passionate. The country needs you again. So all of you can, stay engaged in all the ways you can. Whether it's in public service, or the private sector, or philanthropy, academia, running for office yourself, or anything else you choose to do. I give you my word, we believe in you. We, Jill and I, our family, believe in you. Just as I've said, how the laws we enacted, our seasons are going to grow and bloom for decades to come. I say that to you as well. I have no doubt you'll make this experience and take the friendships you made to continue to do amazing things in decades to come. That's why I see a future. All of it leading the way by you all. So take some time to decompress, reconnect with your friends, spend more time with your family. But most of all, take care of yourselves and each other. I mean it. Let me close where I began with my sincere gratitude. And I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I've been doing this for 50 years. You're the best group of people. Hard to say. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. And I tell you what, the greater honor is being able to serve with all of you. You're incredible. You really are. You really are. Mark my words. History's going to judge what you've done as one of the most significant contributions that's been made by all of America. Look, folks, let me close with that poem you heard me quote before. Seamus Heaney wrote, "Once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice will rise up in hope and mystery rhyme. You made it rhyme louder than it's rhymed in a long time." I really mean it. We're on the cusp of real change, so let's make hope and history rhyme. I love you all. I'm keeping you too long, but thank you. Bottom of our heart, thank you. Thank you. Can I go up this way?
And that was former President and Mrs. Biden about an hour and a half ago at Andrews Air Force Base on their way to California. From the Washington Monument, here is a view of the U.S. Capitol. You can see the flags and the stands all set up for the outdoor inaugural. That did not happen. Of course, it took place in the rotunda. Right now, there's a congressional lunch going on that the president and the vice president are attending. After that, there's a review of the troops at the Capitol and then down to Capital One Arena for the truncated presidential parade that will be indoors at the congressional luncheon. The menu includes crab cakes with wine, Angus ribeye steak with wine, and apple icebox terrine with sour cream ice cream and salted caramel with wine. Those are the three courses being served at the congressional lunch. We're going to continue to take your calls as we cover live events of the 60th inaugural here in Washington, D.C. But in the meantime, we want to catch up with John McCardle as well.
Peter, at that luncheon you were talking about, it's taking place in Statuary Hall. I believe it's champagne that's being served with dessert there, but it's an interesting menu for sure. You also were pointing out the interesting pairings at the various tables at that luncheon. A few pictures of that from some of the congressional reporters who are milling around watching the scenes there. This is Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News saying to him perhaps the most interesting conversation, Senator Lindsey Graham, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, and Justice Brett Kavanaugh chatting in a huddle there. Here's another one from Jake Sherman as well. This one is Senator Bernie Sanders and Health and Human Services nominee RFK Jr. And some of the other scenes from inside the Capitol. Senator James Lankford noting he enjoyed seeing Carrie Underwood sing America the Beautiful, noting that she was born in Oklahoma from the Sooner State. And then this from Chuck Grassley, tweeting out the picture watching the inauguration alongside Cory Booker, the Republican from Iowa, and the Democrat from New Jersey there. Jake Sherman noting when it comes to Chuck Grassley, his first inauguration as a member of Congress, he was in the House at the time, was 1976, Jimmy Carter's inauguration then in 1977.
And Chuck Grassley is the president pro tempore of the Senate, which means he's the longest serving member of the Senate in the majority party. Over in the House side, it's Hal Rogers, who is Dean of the House. Hal Rogers first won election in 1980, the same year that Ronald Reagan became president. Now back to your calls. Kevin in West Milford, New Jersey, Republican line. Kevin, what did you think of President Trump's second inaugural speech?
I thought it was excellent, actually. It really beat his first. I think his first was a little bit scattered, but this time he's really come into the role of president, I would say.
And why did you enjoy? What did you enjoy about it? I mean, there were a lot of policy specifics, usually not delivered in a inaugural address.
I felt though they were policy specific. There was a large, wide-ranging scope to the speech. I felt as if he had in his mind's eye, you know, our entire nation, its history, our achievements, and our hopefully bright future.
What's the main issue of concern for you?
Abortion is, actually.
Thank you, sir, for calling in. Edgar is in Moscow, Idaho, Democrat. Edgar, good afternoon to you. Edgar, you with us? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I frankly, I wasn't very impressed. I thought there was a lot of kind of toxic showboating. You know, Barron's, he's just too tall. He was getting distracted the entire time, and you know, frankly.
We will move on to Patrick in Satellite Beach, Florida, on our independent line. Patrick, what do you got for us?
Hi, yeah, I hope Trump is able to do a lot of good in these coming years, but I think the thing is, it doesn't really seem to matter who's in power because things pretty much stay the same overall. If we don't address, you know, what some call the deep state or whatever, and release the ZPT free energy technology that's been kept from the world at large since the 1950s, things aren't going to truly transform, not just in the USA, but in the world, for the good of all humanity in the decades that follow.
Do you see President Trump as a potential disruptor?
Yes, I think that, but he also is, I mean, a lot of times you can't always take what he says at face value. He says one thing, but he might be thinking or doing something else. You don't always know what he knows, but like he's very focused on, drill, baby, drill, and that's great. We have a lot of oil and stuff, but that still doesn't get to the point of this technology that we are, a lot more people are finding out has been held from us for, close to 100 years now, that would free the entire world and it would heal the planet. And none of this false green energy stuff with windmills that pollute and damage the oceans and the land and solar panels that don't really work when the sun doesn't shine and whatnot. And it's like, hey, let's stop that weather manipulation while we're at it and investigate what's under the Getty Museum and put it into dual citizenship and the APAC influence.
Patrick in Satellite Beach, Florida. Our next call comes from a Republican, Oscar, in Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico. Oscar, before I want to get your take on the inaugural taking place in the Capitol Rotunda rather than outside. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on that is that when you see when it happened before, it happened when Ronald Reagan's second inauguration. For me, it looks like a revindication of Donald Trump, because when we saw Donald Trump the first time he was sworn in president, he was like learning the ropes because he was an outsider. Now we're seeing him a more experienced, a more politicized Trump, and now like the second coming of Ronald Reagan, theoretically. And now I wish the best for Donald Trump and the best for all of America.
Why are you a supporter of Donald Trump?
I was a Democrat in 2016 and 2020. I switched to Republican because of the common sense and because Donald Trump doesn't like sweet talk anything. If he has to say hurtful truth, he will say it. He's a straightforward guy, and he has a lot of common sense, and that's what changed me from Democrat to Republican.
Oscar, during the campaign this year, a rather tasteless joke was told about Puerto Rico. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, it was hurtful for all Puerto Ricans. What the jokester said, it was disrespectful, hurtful, and demeaning. But we've seen how President Trump, in his first term, helped Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, giving the largest federal funds for the island. And that's what counts, not what someone says from your campaign, but what you do. And Donald Trump so far has helped Puerto Rico, and we hope it continues helping Puerto Rico.
Where is Cabo Rojo, and what do you do there?
Well, it's in the southwest of the island. I'm a auto parts seller, and I study political science.
So you're about an hour from San Juan? Would that be fair?
2 hours, maybe 2 hours and a half, depends on the traffic.
Okay. And final question, I promise, Oscar.
Yeah.
There's been talk about Greenland and D.C. and other territories being made the 51st state of the United States. What do you think about Puerto Rico being a state?
Well, we have a general election in 2024, and there was a referendum on which the citizens of Puerto Rico wanted to become, if they wanted to become an independent state, continue the status quo, or become a state. 58% of Puerto Ricans chose statehood. We believe that Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico must be the first ones before talking about Greenland or Canada. I believe we have been waiting too long. Puerto Rico, I believe, is one of the oldest colonies that the United States have, and we have to show the moral standards that we believe in freedom and the determination of the people, and Puerto Ricans have chose statehood.
Oscar, thank you for your time. Thanks for watching from Puerto Rico. Debbie is on the line. Debbie is in Florence, Alabama. Democrat. Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
So how are you feeling today as a Democrat?
Well, I don't know. Just kind of numb, really. I tuned in because I don't want to be willfully ignorant, even though a lot of my friends say I'm not going to watch the train wreck or whatever. I just said, no, I want to see what's going on. I want to see what he says. I want to know what's going on in my country. And I was really it started off bad because his ego was present in the immediately when the flag was changed, and it didn't honor President Carter's passing, and that is an American tradition. So his ego won out there, and the flag was raised because he couldn't have it at half-mast or half-staff. And also the other reason I was calling was all the speculation on the reason Joe Biden, President Biden, did the last-minute pardons. They're saying, well, what did they do wrong? It's only, they're starting to speculate, and it doesn't mean that they did anything wrong. It just out of his own Trump's vow to get vengeance on his perceived enemies. That alone would make me want to protect my family, and because Biden was on the list, the media was on his list of those who had wronged him in his eyes. He was going to, wreak vengeance on them, and I think it was a protective move. It's not saying that they did anything wrong. It's saying that in Trump's eyes, you never know that what he can possibly do, because he is a little unhinged on things like that.
That's Debbie in Florence, Alabama. President Trump has one more duty at the Capitol this afternoon, and that's a review of the troops. That will happen, then the motorcade to Capitol One, the truncated parade, and at some point he'll get back to the White House. There'll be some executive order signings at Capitol One Arena and at the White House, and then the balls are tonight. And he is scheduled to attend 2 or 3 of those, and C-SPAN will be live as long as the cameras are up and we're able to see the first dance and perhaps any remarks he may make. Again, if you don't like all this blather that we do on TV, turn to C-SPAN 2. Just pictures around the city. You can watch and enjoy just the scenes and no commentary whatsoever. C-SPAN host and producer John McArdle is with us. He's been with us since 7 a.m. this morning. Mr. McArdle, what do you got?
It wasn't too long after 7 a.m. That we learned about those pardons that the caller was just talking about. One of the headlines from the Hill newspaper that will show you Biden pardoning Dr. Fauci, Mark Milley, the January 6th committee ahead of the Trump inauguration. I want to show you also when it comes to Mark Milley, one of the scenes at the Pentagon right now. Tara Kopp is Associated Press Pentagon reporter, and she notes when it comes to Mark Milley, the former Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman's portrait has now been removed from the Pentagon hallway where it was hanging as late as just before 1 p.m. Eastern today, when an earlier photo was taken showing it was there. It's now gone. The portrait was just unveiled back on January the 12th, saying it's not clear where the portrait was removed to, but it's no longer hanging on the wall where it was. Tara Kopp of the Associated Press pointing that out from just across the Potomac River at the Pentagon.
Thank you very much. Well, the president spoke. His inaugural address was 30 minutes long or so, about 3,000 words, twice as long as his previous, the longest in modern history. We want to show you a portion of this. This is from about 3 hours ago.
Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families. Thank you. America will reclaim its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, most respected nation on earth, inspiring the awe and admiration of the entire world. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs. President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman and gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for many of the great things he did, including the Panama Canal, which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. Above all, my message to Americans today is that it is time for us to once again act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization. So as we liberate our nation, we will lead it to new heights of victory and success. We will not be deterred. Together we will end the chronic disease epidemic and keep our children safe, healthy, and disease-free. The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars. Ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation, and right now our nation is more ambitious than any other. There's no nation like our nation. Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. I stand before you now as proof that you should never believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do best. From New York to Los Angeles, from Philadelphia to Phoenix, from Chicago to Miami, from Houston to right here in Washington, D.C., our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America, promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We're going to win like never before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In recent years, our nation has suffered greatly, but we are going to bring it back and make it great again, greater than ever before. We will be a nation like no other, full of compassion, courage, and exceptionalism. Our power will stop all wars and bring a new spirit of unity to a world that has been angry, violent, and totally unpredictable. America will be respected again and admired again, including by people of religion, faith, and goodwill. We will be prosperous. We will be proud. We will be strong, and we will win like never before. We will not be conquered. We will not be intimidated. We will not be broken, and we will not fail. From this day on, the United States of America will be a free, sovereign, and independent nation. We will stand bravely. We will live proudly. We will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that was the final 10 minutes of President Trump's second inaugural address in the rotunda of the Capitol. The entire address was about 30 minutes long, about 3,000 words, the longest in modern American history. That